Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Heart Full of History. I'm Selene Castrovilla, your host, and I am so excited to bring my guest, Beth Anderson. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
Beth is the author of how many books do you have now out with Calkins Creek?
Number 9 is coming out in January.
Amazing. Yay for you. That's quite an accomplishment. And what year was the first one?
2020, right when the pandemic hit.
So it's so amazing to have so many books in that time. Like that, it takes me so like my books take such a long process that the fact that you have all these coming out, like wow, I'm really amazed by, and they're beautiful books. Your books are always so beautiful. We're
The
gonna
arts, yeah.
the art is, but you're right. Like everything just always flows with your books, and I'll have you back. We'll talk about several of your books, as time goes on. But right
Okay.
now, we are here to talk about your most current book. You have another book coming out, but your most current book is Thomas Jefferson's Battle for Science. Read the. I can't read the subtitle.
Bias, Truth, and a Mighty Moose.
I love that. And how intriguing is that for kids? That they want to know about that moose right off the bat. So why don't we start off with you tell us about the book and tell us how you came up with the idea of writing this.
Well, it started really a long, long time ago because I ran across an article or read something about Thomas Jefferson's obsession with mammoths.
Mm.
And I just thought that was a really fun thing. He was collecting fossils of teeth and bones and all kinds of things, whatever he could find. And so I had started looking at that. And then I saw, as we always do, an announcement in Publishers Weekly that said, excuse me, a book is coming out on that topic.
Wow. Oh, like an adult book?
Pardon me?
For adults?
No, for kids.
Oh.
Yeah. So then I sort of put it aside for a while. And then I saw another article about the moose incident. And I just grabbed onto that. It was like 2017. So it hit me as misinformation and truth and the importance of using good sources and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was totally in our world at that point. And I did see another book coming out about that.
Oh, no.
But this one was Thomas Jefferson and the Moose, and it was about measuring, and it was for younger kids.
Okay.
And so this one, I thought, I'm just going for it because it's a different angle.
Yes.
And I was into the idea of measuring truth. And
which I love. That's so important for so many reasons, right? Especially these days.
Yeah, but it's kind of an abstract idea.
Right. So it's something you can really build on.
Yeah, that turned out to be a real challenge in the writing of how to do it, how much to do. There were challenges with those things all along. And then it got delayed by COVID.
Right.
And so it took much longer than it was supposed to take, but it's all good. It comes out and we're all excited.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The birth of a picture book is always long anyway, because once we write it, then the illustrator has to get to work. And wow, yours looks like it would have taken the illustrator a very long time because there's like so many details in each picture. Like I don't know that. I mean, I'd love to interview them as well at some point because what's the name of your illustrator?
Jeremy Holmes.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to meet him because yesterday I was speaking to Jen Harney and she says hi. Because she did your book, Smelly Kelly, and she's done my new book as well.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, and I just love speaking to illustrators, and because to me it's just a complete mystery to us, right? How they can do that.
Yeah.
But with this book, there's so many details in these pictures. Like I want to talk to him about how long it took him to do those, and like, wow, it's like I want to be in his brain. They're so creative, like they're so like. It's just so whimsical and creative. Doesn't he seem like a really fun person based on his pictures?
He does. And, that my favorite part of the whole publishing process, I think, is that first day when you can see the sketches.
Yes.
Because it's always so different than you imagined as the writer. And I got a movie going through my head as I'm writing and I'm picturing, oh, this could be there or this could be there, and it comes out completely different than anything I
Yeah.
imagined, and so much better, so
That's
creative. And
amazing. Yeah.
he really got inside Jefferson, and he got inside the research. He researched
Mm.
like crazy for this, and he didn't depend on any notes that I provided.
Yeah, it shows in the illustrations. Show us a couple more of the illustrations if you can.
Well, one of them where it shows what he did with his research. Um, this this one right here, where you
Mm.
see
Mm.
Jefferson is doing the scientific inquiry process to try to figure out how to debunk the Count Buffon's theory that is about degeneration in America, and that everything here is less and defective and ridiculous. And he actually went and dug out a primary source where it was one of the sources that I had in my bibliography, I think, but he went and he put a piece of that source in there because the page says, where did the scientist get his information if he had never been to America? And Thomas looked closer. Buffon had relied on the notes of travelers. Did they measure or weigh the animals? Thomas asked, or mistake the species? And then you see this image of the
Yeah.
bear blowing up the
Yeah.
cow along with
I love that.
the text of the original primary source
Yeah,
that's
that's
that says
that's
that's how
amazing.
bears attack cows. They bite them and blow them up.
Of course.
So it just shows the ridiculousness of
Yeah.
some of the historical
Yeah,
sources.
that's it's just brilliant, and you can see how much that book in particular struck me about how much that illustrator put into that. Like, wow, you know.
Yeah, and then the opening spread has a lot of little details from primary sources also. You
Mm,
get some
beautiful.
of his notes. I don't know if you can see
I
it
see.
very well, but some of
Yeah,
his
yeah.
notes from his journals
I love that.
about everything he measured. There's the journal piece where he's recording the weather while they're debating the Declaration of Independence on July
Wow,
4th. It's
that's
just like
fascinating. I
this
love
guy
that.
was obsessed with figures and facts
Yeah,
and nature, and so there's some of that stuff
that's
there
amazing.
that
Wow.
is just perfect.
Wow, it really is, and it really. I love seeing different sides of people that we know. Well, that's the same thing I did with George Washington. Like I find these little moments, not so little. I mean, if this book, we wouldn't be a country, but it's sort of unknown moments or sides of people that we just never see, and I think it never. It's amazing how many of these things there are. We grew
Yeah.
up and we saw people just in a black and white way, right?
Hmm.
And it was boring, right? When I learned about Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, I was like, these people are boring. I have no interest in them. But now with these new things about them, like they've become 3D for us. They're so exciting, and kids are like, wow, and it makes them human for them, and they're going to appreciate history and these stories so much more than we could have when we were younger.
Yeah, I think your new book and some of mine are also like, if you looked at an adult book on this person, a bio, you would find probably one or two sentences about this
Yeah.
thing that we have really dug into and now made a picture book that really
Yeah.
explains. I mean, it shows character and setting and
Mm.
just all kinds of things that you would never get otherwise.
You never would, and this is just I find it so fascinating about Thomas Jefferson. We really just hear a couple of things about him, and um, tell us about the Mighty Moose. How does the Mighty Moose come in?
Well, the Mighty Moose is, like I said, Buffon is trying to. Uh, he has this theory that everything is lesser in North America, and he publishes an encyclopedia that states that, and that just infuriates Jefferson because he knows it's totally wrong.
Oh,
But
show
then
the
he
picture
has to.
about Jefferson being infuriated. I love that picture.
Okay, yeah. Well, first you
Yeah,
get a little bit of this. So he's reading, and then he
yeah,
gets
I
mad,
love that.
but
Just like
and then
such
he
a great
decides,
picture.
how can I show that this is wrong? And for me it was really hard to get to this point of detailing inside his head what's going on as he's thinking, because it's that critical thinking process, it's the
Yes.
scientific thinking, that he's examining each little thing that Buffon says and he's countering it. And he's
Mhm.
trying to find a way to, blow that theory out of the water. And what Jeremy did was he separated it all into kind of graphic novel
Mm.
type panels,
Yeah, I love that.
which really helps the delivery of that. And
Absolutely.
then this is the one.
Oh, I love that
That's the
too.
one you
Yeah.
like, right?
Love it. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
I
It's
mean, that's
amazing.
that's interior conflict, right?
Yeah. And it's so relatable for kids. I mean, kids, I think in a way that they don't really understand that grown-ups can feel this way too, because kids feel that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, this guy's like us. We all have these same emotions and frustrations and things. And look, he set out and he did something about it. So important that they learn.
Yeah.
Don't give up. You keep trying until you succeed. They find a different way.
And it,
that. So besides learning history, they're learning about humanity. They're learning about themselves, to trust in themselves. It's just amazing.
yeah. And then one of the other challenges was, how do you show what bias is to
Mm,
kids? Because they don't really have a real idea about how that might play out in the world. And
yeah.
so when I finally landed on the three questions,
Mm.
and Jeremy showed this snake representing France and
Mm.
Buffon sneaking up on him,
Yeah,
it
that's
was
wow.
just
Beautiful.
perfect.
Wow, it
Did
really
he use
is.
faulty facts? Did he choose evidence to fit his own beliefs?
Yes.
But that was a tough spot there. But I mean, all throughout his illustrations, actually, I mean, they even enhance the pacing, because when you
Yeah,
get to
absolutely.
a few
Yes,
things
it's
like,
very active. It feels like it's in motion.
yeah,
Yeah.
like this page where he's waiting, and waiting isn't usually something we want to dig into as action, but
Yes.
actually the waiting here was the conflict. And
Yes.
so, where I put 1 month, 5 months, 10 months, he separated them into panels with Jefferson doing something different in each one.
Yeah.
And so it kind of really drags that piece out.
Yeah.
Just, it was
Yeah,
perfect.
absolutely.
It's
And yeah, it
totally
really
amazing.
is perfect because it could just be like 1 month. It could like it one of long ago in just the way nonfiction picture books used to be, it would just probably just say 1 month. It wouldn't have all that at all. It's amazing the renaissance we're having. The whole idea of having these nonfiction picture books is so incredible. And I know I watched your video that you made for Calkins for Astra, the parent company Astra Books for Young Readers, about and you said you love to have science and history combined. Well, I'm going to confess I can't stand science. I mean I believe in
Oh,
it. Don't get me. No. I believe in it. I support it. I wish everybody was on the same page about it. But for me, I can't. I won't say I can't stand it. I can't grasp it. Okay. So tell us about how you. I want to know more about like that science part. Is that easy for you to grasp all that stuff and put it together with the history?
it depends what it is. I mean, I love the idea of how science and history are intertwined,
True.
and how they affect each other. And I think that's the fascination with these stories that have science in there, because the world, kids in school I'm a former teacher. Kids in school have their classes all divided up nicely,
Yeah.
but when you can show how the world is really totally integrated in cause and
Mm,
effect, and how everything plays off each other, to me that's really valuable and fascinating,
yeah.
because there is no um, curriculum area in isolation.
That's so true. And I often thought about that when my kids were in school, and I wasn't a teacher. I was just a substitute teacher. But you're right, and I think it's kind of it's really a shame the way things are all separated and integration. That's why I was thinking I think we're both gonna be at the National Conference of Teachers of English this month. We tried to do a proposal, but we didn't get ours in. But we're both going to be there. You're going to be there, right?
Yeah,
You have,
yeah.
yeah. So, but so I always think like, and then there's another conference for history for social
Social
studies
studies at
around
the
the
same
same time.
time.
I really feel like it all should be integrated because like there's so they do overlap so much. It's just kind of a shame the way things work. I understand, um, but I do wish there was a way to integrate it. And you're right, your book is integrating that. So that the
Yeah.
science part, the science and the social studies, amazing. It's really an amazing thing.
I've taught in some schools where they call it integrated curriculum, and it is
Hmm.
somewhat integrated.
Oh,
But
that's
to
good.
see how it plays out in life and how, decisions that people make and challenges that they face is different, I think. And, you
Hmm.
said history to you wasn't much when you were a kid, and it wasn't to me either. I mean, it was all names and dates and places, and,
Exactly.
it was really hard to relate to. I did read a lot of biographies, but they were really distant
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
just kind of this big picture where you never really felt connected to that person.
Exactly.
So I love
Exactly.
the history now where you can get in close and you can really see it through that person's eyes and understand the challenges and
Yeah.
how setting where you are in time and place.
Yeah.
That's real. That's a conflict and we're having it right now. We're all part of history.
Exactly. I think
So,
in the future, when people write about us, it will be easier somehow because they're seeing videos of us. They're seeing we're
oh yeah.
documenting our lives left and right. But when you're talking about people in the past, we really have to sort of piece it together through their letters. Of course, primary sources are the only way to go, and so we have to find their journals. Their we're not going to see any recordings of them.
Right.
It's very challenging. I remember my first book. I had to I my Carolyn wanted to know the name of the guy's horse. I'm like, he didn't say the name of the horse, so I had to piece it. Oh my god! I traveled around. I literally went. I was like, oh, I'm finding this horse's name, and I did. Well, I mean, I never found it was never stated anywhere, but I pieced it together through all these things, and I had a historian say, oh. Wow, I'm surprised. That's amazing you did that. I agree. I'm surprised I never saw that. So I put that in the back of the book because what if somebody, the horse's name was Highlander? Well, what if somebody said, no, that horse's name was Charlie? So what you can't prove, I always, you piece it together with a reasonable. It's like court, right? A reasonable doubt within reasonable
Yeah.
doubt, and then I put it in the back matter and let kids know how I did it. That serves two purposes. It's an exciting thrill ride to go look for this thing, so they can be challenged. Well, if you don't, because kids today, especially, it's so immediate. Like if they don't get it right away, they kind of that's it. They give up. Well,
Yeah.
no. If you face that wall, hit that wall, and you don't know something, keep going. Find it. You can keep. There's ways. If you really believe in something, go look. Go look. I think I love my back matter in that book as much as I love it's just back matter is so much fun, isn't it?
It is. That's where you get to put all those really cool discoveries that you couldn't put in the story.
Yeah.
But like you said, those little details, they're just little nuggets that make a story so real and make it come alive. And I know Carolyn is a fan of those things, and that
Oh yeah.
it's really true that they're golden,
They
but they're
really
hard
are.
to find.
They are, and a lot of times you find them when you weren't really looking. Like you're looking for
Yeah.
something else, and all of a sudden, what's this? I've learned in the beginning. I didn't understand about like okay, I better take a really meticulous note. Just there's I learned quickly after my first book to make sure I write all the little things have nothing to do with what I'm looking at right now, but this is going to be important later.
Hmm.
It's so much. I see all your
Yeah.
post-it notes behind you. Are you doing another book with that?
Well, yeah, there's another book on there.
Wow, that's
Only I
amazing.
haven't
Yeah.
revisited that one for a few months, so
I've
it'll be
actually
like
been,
starting over
yeah.
again.
Oh, I know. I have that also now because I've been so into doing this podcasting and various things. I have and now promoting your books is a whole other. We kind of need a clone of ourselves to promote our books. But
Yeah.
I know what you mean. When you go back in, it's like starting over. But it's fun. At least
Sometimes,
you rediscover it.
yeah, sometimes you see something different that you didn't see before.
Yes, it's kind
But
of like when cops go into cold cases.
yeah, you get fresh eyes.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I just to sort of turn off from the whole world. I listen to true crime and like historical cases and stuff, and I listen to how they do it, and it kind of reminds me of how I do research and go back and looking at the things. I think when we use our minds, no matter what we're doing, whether we're creating, you know, a book or we're trying to solve a crime or anything. I think it's all the same kind of a mind process. And that's something great for kids to learn. that
Yeah.
our minds are always working in the same way. Every has its own process, but just it's not in a vacuum. If I did this with this way, I can do it this with this way, you know?
Hmm. I like to watch Henry Louis Gates, that show about ancestry on
Oh, I've never seen that.
PBS. And because they really, I wish I had their researchers because they find, 3, 4, 5 generations back.
Oh,
They
wow.
get, they find fit photos and they find, I mean, all kinds of
Is that
amazing
the one
things.
where with the famous people he does it?
Yeah, they take two
Ah,
famous people,
yeah. Oh, I
and
have to
then
see
at
that.
the
I've
end,
heard so much about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
at the end they do their DNA test and they find out who they're related to, and that's always a hoot if they're able to do it, but not
Mm,
always.
interesting.
It's a really fascinating show because you see how our line that we think we come from isn't always what we think.
Yeah, probably
There's
never.
all sorts of surprises, good and bad in it.
Yeah, yeah. I know when I did ancestry, the thing you send in with the DNA, I found out I was all kinds of things. Like I found out I'm 20% French. It's so funny because I've always been drawn to French things. Like for example, Lafayette, another book I wrote. I've always been drawn, and now I'm sort of. My mother was so angry because my mother's Italian, and I wanted to take French. I did wind up taking Italian for like another language later on, but I was like really into the French. And now I know. Well, 20%. See?
I like croissants, but I'm not
I
French.
don't know. I mean, I love Italy too. Like, I mean, who doesn't love? We love. It's great to love everything, really. But my
Yeah,
son
yeah,
keeps coming up with some weird things in his. I'm like, and my ex husband and I didn't think, like, where's that coming from? But the thing is, it's back from wherever you came before you knew where you came. So
yeah.
I've met several people that have Neanderthal in their ancestry.
Wow,
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
that is.
Yeah, that's really far
It
back.
just it just goes to show you that the past has all kinds of surprises in it that when you
Yeah,
really dig in and in all sorts of ways.
really. So let's talk about the process of this book. So you had the idea, you saw that another book came out just about the idea that he was collecting the bones and things like that. Then you saw another one, but again, it was not where you wanted to go. So is that when you decided to just focus on this thing with
Yeah, I was already well into it and I wasn't
oh,
willing to give it up.
right.
And then it went through a few kind of, ebbing and flowing. I knew where I wanted to go with it, but I was trying to do too much. I always try to do too much because I see so much potential in these kinds of stories. And I was really focused a lot on measuring truth and the hypocrisy of the Declaration of Independence, which is what I was calling a larger truth
Hmm.
that can only be measured with your heart.
Mm,
And testing those kinds of truths is different than testing facts and figures and things that you can look up. And I do have that idea in the back matter briefly, but it proved to be just too unwieldy in the text to try to do all that.
yeah,
And then there
yeah,
was there was more to Jefferson's well, there's more to Buffon's thing and what the other French scientists were putting out, and a lot of it is just so awful about race and things like
true.
that. So
Yeah,
sticking to animals helped because that's comprehensible for kids. And then he also had like 3 tables in his book, and one was the one that's referred to in the book with the quadrupeds, and then there was another one that talked about diversity of species and another one that talked about the degeneration of domestic animals. And I had it all in there to start, but it had to keep taking out pieces and pieces
yeah,
because it didn't need all that extra stuff. I just needed to streamline the idea of truth and misinformation and where are you getting your information and keep that thread going tight,
mm.
because getting into all the stuff, even though it was fascinating in different ways, it was bogging it down.
That's really important. I think streamlining is a great word to think about, and the idea that you knew you to know that focus of is everything what is actually adding to support the the question that I'm going to ultimately answer and have to take everything out. I think
Yeah.
that's an amazing thing for anybody who writes, or young people too, to see, like when you can't throw just the whole kitchen sink in there. It's just just confuses it, and it's like too many chefs spoil the broth. Well, too many
Yeah.
pieces spoil the book,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that a lot of people don't grasp about. That might be one of the main keys to writing, especially history, but I would say anything. You have to find that through line and stick to it.
Yeah, and you have to know the purpose of the book. An
Yeah,
adult book might be different, but still, if you're making the same point with another piece of information, you don't need it in a picture book
exactly,
or illustrated
exactly,
text because you're just repeating and it's not moving. I think we're
exactly.
kind of taught to include all the evidence, when we write sort of
Hmm.
informational type text, and we feel like we have to put it all there because we found it all and
Right.
it's all part of that historical record. But in reality, that's what kills off interest in history is when you try to hit
Yes.
people over the head with too much.
It's so true. It's so true. And when I read adult books, it sounds like it's, but when I read books for written for adults, a lot, I'm like, can you? They'll say something, and then it'll just go into a whole different thing. I'm like, can we? I want to hear more about this one line you said, and then they'll go like, it's just so That's just the way they're done. But I have no patience for those books anymore. I just
Yeah.
I just go to their sources and I read the primary sources to find out what I want. That's what I use. When an adult book is written about something, and there always is something for adults, and I go and I just go in the back to the bibliography and I look for these. That's what they're great for, to just
Yeah.
cut through and find things. Besides the things I've already found. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't have patience for those books. In general, when I read an adult novel too, I'm like, come on, can we get to the point? Can we get to the point? You know?
Yeah, that's the mark of the good writer, especially with narrative nonfiction for adults. It's hard to find ones that really move,
I know. It's so
move.
true. I
I want it to
know.
feel like the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There are definitely good ones. I mean, I haven't read many lately because I read what I write basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'm just spoiled. I want to feel it. I want to know what's. Come on, let's go, let's go. And I think our books are doing that. Our books are like boom, you're getting right through, right through. They're
Yeah.
making an audio book of my book. Do you have audio books of your books?
I have them of a couple. I have one of Lizzie Demands a Seat, and I thought they were going to do, I don't know.
Can you hear
The
my
new one
dog? Can
has
you
an
hear my
audio
dog
book.
barking?
The the audio book
Yeah.
for the new one is coming out probably the same time as the book.
I have that too. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
exciting, isn't it?
It is.
Because I mean, I have one for my book Seeking Freedom, and that's longer, but this book is really short. I'm like, wow, this is going to be a short audiobook, but okay.
Yeah,
I think
I
it'll
was
be
amazed by
fun.
how
Yeah.
well you streamlined that one.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
let me tell you.
great.
Thank you. Oh, it took about 10 years.
Yeah, I
Yes, it takes me
figured.
a long time because I talk about having to get rid of the things you don't need. I
Yeah.
had Horatio Gates in it, who was always the nemesis for Washington. I had Alexander Hamilton. I had everybody. Oh, I had George Washington pondering everything in the Temple of Virtue, pacing up and down. Now the book doesn't even mention Temple of Virtue, like until the back matter. This is what it is. You have to cut it out,
It
and kill
takes a
your
long time to
darlings.
get there. You got to keep shaving it off from the edges.
It's crazy. It's like I always this is the quote that I keep mentioning in these episodes when Michelangelo said, "I saw the angel in the stone and I carved till I set it free." And it's like that's what it is, because I mean marble itself is beautiful, but you got to carve out and get that thing that you're
Yeah.
seeking. You're setting it free, and we are setting our stories free, and
Yeah.
to fly to it's isn't it just the best thing to know, like that young people are reading our books and we're just like making this difference in the world and helping people. It's so amazing. I'm so grateful to be able to do this.
I love to see when kids are amazed by, true history
Yeah.
as much as with a fantasy book. And the other thing I really love is when older kids are reading these illustrated texts and valuing them and loving them for all sorts of reasons, and teachers are using them because they really aren't little kid books. The
Exactly.
reading levels are usually
Yeah,
about fifth grade. The idea levels, the concepts that you can talk about. I mean, you could go through high school. You can
absolutely.
go with adults for these things. I mean, they just have so much potential.
Yeah, and I think these days, when the way people have such limited attention, I think that adults should be reading these because it fits their attention span. I mean, do you see how people scroll through the TikTok? Is what is going on there? I mean, I'm really worried about people. Like, nobody has any patience for anything. And the music, and there's a video, and it's got this loud music, and then there's subtitles, and you're supposed to be reading these titles. Like, I would rather hear the person tell me the thing, like what's going on here, So I think under these circumstances, our books are great, and the audio book will be really great too because they can listen to it quickly and learn so much. So I think we're really adapting to just whether we like it or not. The world has changed so much, and we have to go for the positive stuff. Even
Yeah.
AI, like, oh my god, we always think about the horrifying parts of it, but I will say some of it. Okay, the other day, do you know that they put AI in Facebook, like when you have your comments? And
Yeah.
I read this. It said people are commenting about they love the author's infectious joy and this and that. I'm like, I'll take that. I loved reading the summary of the comments. It was so unneeded because I read the comments anyway, but it was kind of cool.
Oh,
So,
I don't think I've seen that. It
oh
feels
yeah,
kind of stiff, though.
it's not. I mean, it's just sort of summarizing. It
Yeah.
actually quoted a couple of people's comments. It was
Well,
really kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's scary. It really is kind of scary. It's scary, but it's
it's
here.
presenting a lot of new challenges.
It really is. But I will say, if used properly, and nothing is ever used properly, I'll say that.
That's true.
Especially we know that, but there are definitely some interesting things about it, and I
Yeah.
did like reading that summary. I took a little screenshot. It made me feel good. Hey, it was all positive. Because think about it: when you write a Facebook post, people aren't going to be negative to you. They're like, "Yeah, go get us." It's
Yeah.
exciting. I love Facebook. It's like um, we have a bunch of friends and cheerleaders there. Who wouldn't love that? You're having a bad day, say something on Facebook, and so many people will make you feel better.
Yeah.
But I think our books make people feel better. I think um, we have such an uncertain world. It's just, it always has been uncertain. Nobody knows what life's going to be. But to learn that the people in the past faced these uncertainties and they did, and they conquered these things
That's
gives us
right.
the courage that we can do it too. And that's another great thing for young people, you know?
Yeah, I think that when you have that perspective of history and you can see how long things take too. I mean, it gives you a reality check, but you also see what's possible,
Yeah.
and you see that these are real people struggling just like we do.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing new.
It's nothing new, but that's where our books, I think, are different than a lot like these books that just summarize. Because when they summarize, we don't know how the important part is seeing how it happened, the steps leading up to everything.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you feel like I can't. Well, he did that. He must be brilliant. I can't do that. When we see all the steps, us and kids, everybody, okay, this can be done. So I too can face a challenge. I think that's just so important. But I
Yep.
love your tagline. How do you measure the truth? Is that what it is? It's something like that,
Yeah.
right?
How do you measure truth?
That I love that. I think you should make T-shirts with that. I mean,
I
that's
like it.
really
Yeah. That's good.
that's really amazing. Okay, and
It's a really hard question, and I think it's getting harder and harder
it is,
in
but I
our
think this
world.
it's so important. Like that just immediately focuses you in on it, and truth is what is truth. What is truth between what's being told to us? What is our truth? There's so many things in that. And I just love that. I think you should at least make bookmarks with that on it.
Oh, that's not on my bookmarks, but I should put it on
I
there.
think you
Yeah.
should because that's something, it's like a call to action for your mind. And I think that's something that all teachers could use that for all, like, it's so important. That's really one of the best taglines I've ever seen. So congratulations.
Oh,
Love it.
thank
I
you.
love it.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize I need to use it more,
You
maybe.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really hit me hard. Just from life the way it is. Think about it. There's so much fake truth now. And so it's something that works for your book, but it works for everything. And I love that.
But there's been an issue with all that forever.
Forever. Forever.
It just gets
Yeah.
harder though with AI and deep fakes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
How do you really? But unless people are taught to question and investigate,
Exactly.
duped, totally duped.
And it keeps coming up over and over again in history. So I can only hope, well, I think just the stakes are a bit higher now because of the thing that really gets me is global warming, but that's a
I
whole
know.
other topic. But I suppose we'll get through it. But young people to be informed, I think how do you measure truth is something they should be thinking about right now in every aspect. I think you need to get that as
Mhm.
much as I mean. I just love it. I just love it. So
Thanks.
that was great. When did you come up with that? Did you just say
It
like
was really in the beginning when I was when that story hit me in that way because we were struggling with it. And it's an idea that measuring is so precise and exact and easy, but it's not.
yes,
And some of my other books too, I think there are things we think about that have a whole nother twist to them,
mm,
and to try to push people into a wider thinking about something is always my goal.
absolutely, and consider all sides too. I mean,
Hmm.
it's anything we read about history is from someone's point of view about how they felt about it, and that's why it's
Yeah.
so important to consider everybody's sides. Yeah, I think that's why I like social studies because there's so many ways to look at the truth, and I mean, truth is like I love thinking about every when you're writing it, you're putting that person. It's not really our truth; it's the person's truth that we're writing about. Whereas math and science are so precise, I think that's what bothers me about them. I don't like the one answer thing. I like the idea that there's all different ways to think about the truth and everything. In my
Yeah.
mind, it's just a ball of chaos. Show that picture with the explosion of everything coming out.
Oh, my favorite. Yes, my favorite. Because this is what happens to my brain when I write. And I
Yes,
have done all that
love
research,
that. Absolutely, me too. Yeah,
and it's just exploding
yeah,
in
it's
there,
amazing.
trying
And
to
I
find
think
its
that's
way
so
on the page.
relatable too. That's the chaos. I think all of us have these minds, and I think some people want to not face it and just sort of look the other way. But I think we have to face that stuff. We have to embrace the chaos and work through it, and that's really how we're going to get through all our problems and things. Um,
Yeah, and one of the things that we have both faced with the founding fathers is, the hypocrisy of what they were doing to establish the country with their
yeah.
own personal lives. And I
Yes.
mean, Jefferson is notorious amongst them for that hypocrisy, for that bias, and he
Yeah.
was really doing the same thing as Buffon was doing
Yeah.
in his own way, and to
Yeah.
be so that was another challenge of the story. But I
Yeah.
had to think, okay, I just need to get kids to understand bias and how it works and how we try to fight against it. And then in the back matter, I can mention these other things because he
Right.
had biases and they were really destructive biases, and
Yes.
we have to learn to look at others and look at ourselves and be able to think beyond that historical piece we've been handed through, decades of textbooks,
Yeah.
and see that there's just much more to people than we realize, and there's good
Yeah.
and bad in everybody.
There is. I always was drawn to Jekyll and Hyde. And that I just that is and when I went to Edinburgh recently, and that's where the real guy that inspired the book Jekyll and Hyde was that's where he was. So we really think about it, and the duality of man, it's in all of us. We don't want to look at it a lot, but it's there, and
Yeah.
it's just what and also the times. I mean, I don't want to make excuses for anybody, but I guess it was easier for them to sort of, they were doing, I don't go along with, I was just doing like everybody else at all, but you do have to look at the whole picture of the times. Um, and I used to go. I loved. There was a show, Jekyll and Hyde, a musical, and I was a Jackie. I used to go like I had a gift basket store, and I was able to get the tickets through barter. I must have seen Jekyll and Hyde 100 times because it's that duality of man. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it ends tragically, but like, yeah, we all have it. That's an extreme split, but the founding fathers and everybody is not perfect. They unfortunately, it's a lot to reckon with them. I
It is.
still can't really reckon with it, um, but we have to recognize that without them, we wouldn't be a country, and we have to recognize the amazing things that they did for us. And unfortunately, nobody is perfect, and everybody does have this duality, and we have to acknowledge it. But we can't just condemn the person because they really, without Jefferson, without Washington, without all these people, better or worse, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be us.
Yeah.
We'd be walking around. We would have British accents, which could be fun.
Well, I think part of it too is not. I mean, the one of the challenges is providing enough contextual information that we don't judge 2 centuries ago by today
Well, that's
and
very true
what
too.
we know and how
Yeah.
we interpret things like, seeing Deborah Sampson in a Continental Army uniform. That means something totally different today than it
Yes.
did at
Oh,
that time.
absolutely. Yeah. I
And
love
so
that's
I think
another book of yours. I love that also. Yeah. Yeah.
it's that's part of the how do you put all that in there, you
No,
know?
it's I guess you're right, and that's up to also the people reading with the young people. That's something that's a discussion thing too. That's another thing about our books. They're discussion points for
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
open up with, and I think they could, in school, parents, anybody, it's a great. I do love hearing about the discussions people have had with my books, and I think it takes it in a whole different area. You know, I also wrote about Deborah. I did a book called Founding Mothers for Scholastic, and she's in that. Now that was quite a
Yeah.
challenge because I really didn't. I had such little. I had like a one spread to talk about each person. I'm like, oh come on,
That's tough. Yeah.
very tough, very tough. Then I started writing like once a little bit older about civil rights. I wrote about each year, not each, I wrote about several, there's maybe six of them a year in civil rights. So I was able to get a little bit more into that. But the founding mothers, seriously, that was, wow. I just wanted to say whole things about him. And I was thinking about Deborah Sampson, but you beat me to that book. So good for you. And also the other one I was interested in was the Prudence, was it Prudence Wright? What's her name?
Revolutionary Prudence Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great one too. I was like all about that. And I'm like, oh my, I've been beaten again.
We probably all see the same articles.
We do. So we've got
And
the
then it's
race to
like,
the
hurry
vision.
up, hurry up. Yeah, the one that's on the whiteboard now is probably already done in manuscript form by you. So I don't know.
Oh no, probably not. I'm working on one that's much more contemporary right now. Much more. I've really spread. I will say I have spread my wings out. I'll never forget when I wrote my first Civil War one, and Carolyn was like, "Well, welcome to the next century," But I mean, I think you feel the same. Where we find a story, that's where we are. Did you have like so you're saying when you were inspired with this, it was literally a newspaper article. That's what it was?
No, not newspaper. I subscribe to a lot of news feeds
Oh, okay.
from organizations,
Oh, oh, I
like
see.
Nature and Smithsonian and stuff like that.
Ah,
So I once in a while I see something in one of those. Sometimes I find an idea in the research for something else,
that's right. Yeah.
which might have been the case with Revolutionary Prudence Right. I can't remember. Um, yeah, I'm or something maybe I'm reading on my own unrelated to kid stuff might spark something.
So when you feel a spark, what do? You have like a notebook that you keep them all in?
I do, but I never go to it.
Like,
when
that's
I
what I do. That's so funny.
I have a notebook of things that I go, oh, that'd be a good book. Okay, and I write it down, but I don't go back to it unless I have absolutely nothing to work on.
Exactly.
But I
Exactly.
don't ever reach that point. I
Me
think
too.
I might have looked in that journal once or twice, but usually, or yeah, I might be working. If I work on something, I worked on something from there, and then I saw something else, and I just put that aside and went with the new thing because I was
Yeah.
so excited
You
about
get
it.
so excited. I know it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, it's the thrill of the chase. You
And
have to
so,
do it.
yeah, if they don't
Yeah.
really grab you enough to start looking a little bit immediately, then it's probably not going to happen.
Exactly. I know. I was when I kept seeing Lafayette pop up in my research about Washington. Now I was researching Benedict Arnold, and it kept Lafayette would just like pop up like no one. I was not getting the full picture of why this French guy was around. I'm like, why is he here? And so then when Benedict Arnold had betrayed Washington and Washington sank on his couch in despair, because he just trusted. Arnold was so trusted and loved, and Hamilton said someone has to go get Lafayette. Only Lafayette can comfort Washington. I'm like, why is this French guy the only guy that can come from Washington? And that made me write Revolutionary Friends to answer my own question. So I know
Yeah,
exactly what you mean.
yeah,
That's how all my books about the Revolutionary War all came from pieces to answer my own questions in my research.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by the Revolutionary War because it's so much more than a war.
Yes.
That period of time is a revolution of ideas.
Yes.
And like Revolutionary Prudence Right was something I had sort of done, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And my agent had said there was somebody looking for women's stories, and it didn't go anywhere. And then it sat in the drawer until it hit me in a different way. And I
Yeah.
had started thinking about the DAR there, and I'm excited because I'm going to go see this place
Oh,
when
lovely.
I go to
Yeah.
NCTE next
Awesome.
week. I'm going to meet
Yeah.
one of the experts that I talked to, and
Wow,
we
that's great.
talked about some of the artifacts that they still have from her. They have her lantern, and they have her love
Oh,
box,
nice.
her
Wow.
paper love box, and some of those things. And so I started, and I think that is just so cool. But I thought,
That is
if you went into an antique store and you saw that lantern, it would mean nothing.
right.
It's not the lantern, it's the story behind the
Yes.
woman with the lantern. And so then that became the through line idea that,
Mm.
it's these stories, it's women, it's people taking action, stepping up, doing what's needed to be done. And, so it's things like that. So some of those just sit in the drawer for years.
Yes, well,
You
that's what
know,
happened with my glasses book too.
the
Yeah.
story that's coming out in January was one of my first nonfiction stories.
Wow,
And
really?
yeah, it sat in the drawer for years because another book came out, and then this one now is newly relevant
Mm.
because it turns out that January 6th, 2021 wasn't the first time that a group of people tried to stop the elected president from becoming inaugurated and becoming president.
Oh, wow. Well, why
It's
don't you
about
tell us the name of
it's
that
about
book?
Lincoln and the Baltimore plot, where
Wow.
he traveled on the train from Springfield to Washington D.C. for his inauguration, and he stopped at all these places along the way. And see, this is where the context of history needs comes in because you never think about these things. The railroads did not connect in cities.
Hmm.
If they were
Right.
owned by different rail companies, you had to find a transfer from one to the
Right.
next to
Yeah.
continue your journey. And some of the cities like Baltimore had rules that you couldn't make the train go through the main part of the downtown city or something.
Right.
So anyway, the only way to get to Washington D.C. at that time was through Baltimore,
Hmm.
and Baltimore was a southern state,
Mm.
and so the rebels were there, and they were intent on stopping Lincoln.
Wow, that is a great
And
story.
that's the Baltimore plot, and I had never heard of the Baltimore plot
Wow.
until a little bit before that story. And there are 3 amazing books for adults on it. They
Mm.
all take sort of a different angle, but it's a fascinating story. One of
Wow.
them follows John Wilkes Booth and what he was doing at the same time as they're following Lincoln along his journey.
Hmm.
But this is the story of the woman who really is the first detective that's a woman in the US, and she works for Pinkerton.
I have heard of her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kate
Yeah.
Warren. And so
Yeah.
she is a key person in the detective's actions to save Lincoln.
Is she in another one of Corkins Creek's books? I feel like she is somehow. Maybe not. I know her.
I don't
Maybe,
think
maybe not.
so.
Yeah, I've definitely heard about her. But that's
Yeah.
very wow. That sounds awesome. So, what's the name of the book?
Hiding in Plain Sight.
Love it.
Kate
And
Warren and the Race to Save Abraham Lincoln.
love that. And it's I guess it's available for pre-order too, right?
Oh yeah.
There you go. So, and well, once the book comes out, we'll talk about. Well, we'll have you on to talk about that again. But that sounds amazing.
But yeah, it's just one of those things where you don't really understand the risks and this because you don't know that, when you're transferring between railroad stations, you're exposed.
Yeah, that's wow. That's fascinating. Yeah.
So, and that's the challenge of some of the stories is how do you get that information in there because it's vital to the stakes and the drama, but you
Mm,
don't want to bog down the story with extra stuff.
yeah.
And I think that's
Wow.
something we always face with these kinds of things because there's so much that contributes to the actions,
Yes.
but you can't tell it all.
I know. I'm facing that now too. I have a large cast of characters, and that's a big
Ugh,
issue for me right now.
yeah.
Um, but wow, I can't wait to read that. That's amazing. Yeah. Wow, it's so exciting. Yeah, it's amazing the things we don't know. You know,
Yeah.
it really is. I don't know, like history. Well, I guess we'll just never run out of things to write about. Which is good for us. We don't want to
Yeah.
run out, you know.
Yeah.
The challenge is to get it. I'm like, I feel like I'm on a rate. Like, how many books can I write? I got to get it done. I got to get it done. But and then now that I have my podcasting career, I'm hoping that once I get more used to all this, I'll be able to do it. Right now it's like takes me so long. Like this is I'm when I edit this. Like so far, I'm still editing the first one. With the first one I recorded was with Carolyn Yoder, our editor, and it's an hour long, and I've sat for like 2 hours. And I edited 10 minutes so far.
Yeah. Everything takes longer than you think.
It's but you know what, it's another labor of love, and I always, you can see that I just love talking. I love talking to like-minded people. I could talk forever to you, to writers, to Carolyn, to anybody, creators, illustrators, but I don't want to talk to anybody that's not interested. I mean, because some people are so like they're just so boring, for another word. Like they're not. If people aren't offering back something into a conversation, it gets old really fast. I like a give and take. So,
Yeah.
but this has just been so much fun. So you said you were a teacher. Can you tell us? Did you teach a certain grade or?
Well, I taught all the grades, really.
Oh, wow.
I taught English as a second language.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of the kids, I had refugees, I had immigrants, I
Mm,
had people who came, for a couple of years of work, and their dad was transferred for a few years, and they were in the English classes for that. And I taught it in Connecticut and Georgia and Texas.
wow.
So I had a huge, and it was
That's
right when
amazing.
when ESL started, after we had a lot of refugees from the Vietnam War,
Mm,
and the school systems were not able to really help them because there was this very budding field of English as a second language. And so the schools were not prepared. And so my
wow.
first, probably 8 years or so, there's no curriculum. I
Yeah.
had to make it
Wow.
up.
Wow.
And so what I used were books like this, you
That's
know,
amazing.
books and there weren't that many at that time. So I taught middle school first, and then I taught elementary for a number of years. And then I went back and did more middle school. So I had that full range. I had one high school class one year when they needed somebody to take it. But these are the kinds of books I wish I had,
Mm,
because I was looking for things that would support language development, language acquisition. I could teach language arts standards from it. And it would also support kids with building content history or content and vocabulary across the curriculum, you know,
yeah.
science, social studies, even math. The more you can fill in the gaps with the English versions of things, it
Yeah.
was better. But the problem was most of the picture books were for little kids, and they were
Right.
demeaning,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they didn't really contribute to the high levels of thinking that middle school kids are doing,
Right.
even upper elementary. And so having these kinds of books start when I was in Texas, that was great. I mean,
Wow.
and that's what the kids really loved. They
Yeah.
really think real true stories of what happened.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And it
Oh
just,
wow, that's such a beautiful thing that you did all that, like bringing tears to my eyes.
oh,
I love that because
but
when I was subbing, I did have I did sit in with those the ESL classes many times, and I always felt so helpless, really, because when you just like plopped into it, yeah, I really had no idea how to teach at all.
well,
I am not a trained teacher, you
I
know.
had like up to 18 languages in one school.
Wow, I mean that's such a challenge. I think that's
But it
wow,
opens up your world, and what you really see is how we all communicate without language.
that's so true.
And I loved
Yeah.
seeing in one school there was an Israeli boy who was eighth grade, tall, um, and then his best friend. I would see them going down the hallway together. His best friend was about half his size, from Pakistan,
Oh, I love
Muslim.
that. Oh, I love
They-
that. See, that's where it's at. That's where it's
yes,
out. Yeah.
that's where it's at.
Gosh.
But
You
I
should
love
write
doing
about
it.
can you write a story about them? That's an amazing story.
I loved hearing their stories,
I
and
love that.
and when I
Yeah.
realized there was some really great writing experiences with them,
Oh,
especially the middle school kids, because they really can get into stuff. And of course you get the kids that are headed for the gangs and not interested in
mm,
school and don't believe they can do anything,
it's
especially when
awful.
they can't speak the language fluently. But
Yeah.
then there were others, that were just assimilated easily, and found their space. But the ESL class really becomes the safe place for a lot of kids,
Oh, yeah.
because there's everybody else in that room understands what they're going through with culture
Right.
clashes and the struggles throughout their
Yeah.
lives. And
Yeah.
there was the I took a writing class over the summer for teachers, and it was about writing workshop, and I started to do it with the kids. And as a teacher, you're always so busy and you're trying to attend to all their needs, that when you have a little period of writing time, that's what you're doing. But what I really needed to do was write with them.
Mm,
And so then when I sat and just put everything else aside and said, okay, I'm not going to answer any questions, I'm not going to worry how to spell anything, just write. And we would all write. And when we shared, and I shared I shared a story from my childhood that was a real emotionally hard-hitting moment for me, and they were just like,
wow. Wow.
so. And then they started to share, and
Because
then
you were vulnerable. You showed them that that's really beautiful.
but
I
that's
love
when
that.
they started their writing, just
Yeah.
took off,
Yeah.
because it freed them
Right. Yeah.
to let themselves
I
be
love
part of
that.
the writing. And what I
Oh,
tell kids now is that if you're not emotionally connected to that piece on the page, it's really not going to be that good.
exactly.
You have to
Yeah.
connect, you have to feel passionate about things that you write to make them really powerful. And that's where we broke through that line, was by doing it together.
That's beautiful. Wow. I wish we could all do that together in the world. That's just so lovely. Wow.
Yeah, and some of the
Yeah.
kids' stories were just harrowing
I'm
escape
sure.
stories,
Oh,
that
I know.
just break your heart. And all the kids in the room are just stunned that the class
Mm,
clown had this horrific experience and things like that.
yeah.
It's really quite moving.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Wow. Well, thank you, Beth. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation.
We could go on.
We really could go on forever. Well, we're going to meet again about as we go on. I'm going to schedule for multiple times to talk about different books, because I think our passion is so important. I hope our passion is infectious to other people, because this is what we need. We need everybody to be inspired for we can't control the world, but we can do our own thing. We don't
Yeah.
have to let any circumstances get us down. Like these kids escape from these harrowing things, and now they're doing. You were helpful to help them show that they can have a great. Well, hopefully they're all having a great life, but like the idea that something circumstances don't define us, and
Yeah,
I
and
think
that
it's
their
so important
stories are valuable.
that everybody's stories are valuable, and that's so important. Yes, everybody's stories are valuable.
Yeah.
So this has been amazing,
Okay,
and I
fun.
look forward to future chats with you. Everybody, show us your book one more time. Everybody, get this beautiful book, Thomas Jefferson's Battle for Science. Again, I can't read the subtitle.
Bias, truth, and a mighty moose.
And remember, how do you measure truth? It's so important.
It's hard.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And everybody, thanks so much for listening to another episode of A Heart Full of History. Have a wonderful day, and think about measuring your truth.